Hello YouTube, my name's Sean Connors and welcome back to the Outsiders channel, and today I'm going to be doing, for the first time for a while actually, I haven't done one for a long time, a review of a game product, and I think it's missing off my channel. It's something I haven't done for a considerable period of time. I've sort of shied away from doing the reviews, and I'm not really sure why. I've got a stack of role-playing stuff that should really get some light of day, should be done, and it's important to part across that information, what you think about something, and I like to focus, to be honest with you, I like to pick up stuff that I really enjoy or I'm going to get some mileage out of. And one of the things I'm trying to do at the moment with my own group is, my main group this is, they are very much traditional, they're very much more mechanically minded, so I suppose you'd call them much more power game type people really, if you were being honest, to take a breakdown of them. So they're very much on the other end of the narrative spectrum. So one of the things that you have to do as a GM, of course, is to try and manoeuvre them by using a system that will support you as a GM and something that they'd be interested in, into a different way of thinking, and that can be very helpful when you're dealing with people like that. So today's review is going to be all about a system that I think has got a lot of mileage, and it's very topical really. I think it's great to bring this one up, and that's this. So that is the TheOneRing by Cubicle 7. Now this is actually the box that it comes in. It's a very beautiful, thick, I suppose you call it, it's not really a leather-bound box, but it's a beautiful box. Both books is a unique set of dice. I'll just pull those out. I'll talk about those in a moment. Two books that slot into the case. You've got your Lore Master's book and you've got your Adventurer's book. I'll just show you the difference between the two. That's your Adventurer's book. That's your Lore Master book. Both books as well, instantly, again, which is fantastic for these products. Beautiful, probably the most beautiful atmospheric book I've seen, and paper throughout to die for. And this is the sort of, I love paper and pens. I've got a thing about paper and pens, but the way that this is done is absolutely stunning throughout. There's no two ways about it. The whole thing oozes quality from the beginning you open the book to the very end of it. It has some maps of Middle-earth. You have two types of maps. You have the DM's map, which shows pretty much the influences, and that's a thing we'll talk about within this video, that exist within Middle-earth. So there's these sort of influence charts, little markers on it. And then you have the player's map, which is a classic map of Middle-earth. There have been many maps, but this is a very nice one. So you have a beautiful map of Middle-earth. And that's pretty much what comes with the book, the bookcase, I'll call it. That's what comes with it. I've also picked up, but it won't be for this video, depending on the response of this one, the Tales from the Winterland. It's a sort of small compendium, I suppose you'd call it, a relative size series of adventure parts, specifically for the TheOneRing. What stood out for me, and the reason I picked this up, was the fact that just a quick look at it told me that it was a quality piece of work, very well put together. The next thing is, once you open it up and go beyond the pages and start looking at the system, and there's a fantastic program out there that allows you to play around, and I'll put a link on this channel for this video. A fantastic program that allows you to, without the books, create characters, and you can tell when you play around with them, and I would suggest anybody have a look at it, that actually they really ooze that Middle-earth feel. And I think what they've done very well with this system is sit the game in a particular time period. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to take the box, because I think on the back it's explained very well, and let me just read this to you. Smaug has been defeated. The Battle of the Five Armies has been won, and Bilbo has returned to the Shire. The War of the Ring is several generations away. In the relative peace, the free peoples of Wilderland look beyond their borders for the first time, establishing trade routes, renewing bonds between their cultures, and bringing prosperity to the region of northern Mirkwood, the lonely mountain, the eastern slopes of the Misty Mountains. But of course, much danger still remains, and from orc holds of the mountains to the dark and corrupted depths of Mirkwood, a darkness awaits, recovering its strength, laying its plans and slowly extending its shadow. That's what's so beautiful about this game. It's pitched at a point between major events, and they've pitched it in an area that's incredibly exciting, using the fringes of Middle-earth and Middle-earth itself, and focusing on those cultures around that area. And this grip of the shadow that the back talks about is beautifully covered off in the maps, because you may recall when I held this map up, there's areas, I'll hold half the map here so you can at least see me, and these areas in red pretty much show a significant area of the shadow. Now the players aren't going to know that, so whenever they travel and make their plans to travel, the GM can move or twist where the shadow's influence has reached. And if you enter those areas, there's much more chance of an encounter based on the fact of where the shadow's grip lasts. So I love that feel to it, and it creates an epic feel. I mean, everything about this game, it's so difficult, isn't it? It's a very fine line between doing a game that you think to yourself, yeah, is it really Middle-earth? I mean, I've seen many examples. I remember the old Middle-earth system that was created by ICE, and it was okay. It was all right. But did it have the Middle-earth feel? Not really. I mean, you had to, the GM, really work at that to get the atmosphere right, and that's a tough ask, because you're actually asking DMs to step into the shadows of. It's like trying to step into the shadows of a great painter, Leonardo or something, and say, create me a similar masterpiece. I mean, very difficult to do. And because you're trying to step in those shadows as a GM, it's a tough line, because if you get it slightly wrong, the whole game, no matter how well you've done, it doesn't feel Middle-earth. It feels a bit like D&D, or it feels a bit like a sort of a D20 game. I've seen it before, oh no, that reminds me of the Darkness world. That's a tough mix to go down. But what they've done beautifully here is they have created a definitive Middle-earth feel to the game because of the mechanics that they actually use. This is a system, when I talk in my videos about, the 30%, this is very close to 30% for me, because and that is a huge amount of respect for this system, because you've got everything here, which is lovely for the GM. You've got a system, the mechanics create the flavour, which immediately helps you put the layers on top, which is fantastic. You've got scope in the game to explore it out the way you want to go, because it's set between major events, so you haven't got to worry. You know what's coming, but it doesn't have to be that way. You could alter it. Well, there's not really much more I can say. It just has a fantastic scope on that. Now, the mechanics themselves are... I'm not going to go too in-depth on this video because I do want to keep it quite short, but I just wanted to give you a burst of it at this point, and we'll see what the feedback is and maybe go a little deeper. The mechanics support the system, support the feel of the genre beautifully. It feels like Middle-earth when you're travelling. You aid the character's age. There is depth and role-playing depth created within the mechanics to pursue other angles. The way the characters are built tells you that what you're getting here is it's going to be a slow process to build your characters up. It's not quick, so don't expect to fly up. There's no such thing as like levels and things like that. This is more about the character development over a period of time. This is a much more realistic game in that pursuit of what Middle-earth stood for. When you're travelling, players have different roles for what they do. So you might have a frontward scout, you might have somebody supporting. There's lots of different roles that you have. You age in this game. There's history. The character that starts the campaign may not necessarily be the character that gets to the end point in the campaign. It could be an ancestor, and I love that scope, that grand scope that is so Middle-earth. It's very difficult to do. I've been looking for a game for a long time that really focused very well on how age works within games, and I really do believe that they've done this very well in this one. When you see, and it has an Achilles heel, because one of the problems is, of course, that it's a good product, but it hasn't got a huge amount of support. The first book has just recently come out over here in the UK. It's only a month and a half old, and it's been out a while, the system. It's got quite a good following online. There's a lot of support online for that in that regard. But it's such a good system, it's not that difficult with an experienced GM to write material around the idea that they've given you. There is a lot to talk about in this, and I'm not going to continue talking at this stage. I just wanted to give you a flavour of it. I should end by showing you the unique dice. Often one of the little mini criticisms I heard was that these are unique dice, but they're not actually. These are just standard dice, D6s and a D12. It's very easy to duplicate what these dice do, because it's only certain numbers used on them. So really you don't need these to play this game. So dispel that and actually focus on the fact. What you have, high quality game, incredibly well produced, really captures Middle-earth, the best I've ever seen by a mountain mile, with mechanics to support it as close to the 30% as I've ever seen any system give you. Beautiful artwork, lovely maps, and a feel that might be brilliant. And what you have is a game that can really take you into some really unique directions with Middle-earth. I can learn a lot from this as a designer. There's a lot that really struck me when I picked up this game that made me think, I've got to rethink my thought processes again, change, adapt. This is a great game. If I had to score this game, as I like to, out of 4s, first of all, I'd start with the quality of the product, and I'd have to score it a 4. Everything about it oozes quality throughout. There's no faults that I can give. If we then take the product itself, the presentation, the way that it's laid out, the mechanics, the rules, and what have you, I'd give the product 3.5. The only minor thing I don't like is the way that it's laid out index-wise, but this seems to be a common roleplay type product problem, to be perfectly honest with you. It's minor. So overall, what you've got 7.5 out of a possible 8. If we're just being generous here, we have to score the game 3.75 out of a possible 4, just to be a tiny bit harsh. But in reality, this is as close to a perfect 4 as you're going to get. It's the best system I've seen for quite some time. It deserves more mileage in its reviews. At some stage, I may, depending on what people think about the review, as it's going to be a mini review, it's not meant to be anything in depth here. If people like this, then I'll start to break it down and go in a little bit more depth. But for the moment, let me just leave it and say this. Excellent product. I hope it's part of your arsenal products you would want to have as a GM, because there's a lot you can take from this product and use in other games. It has a huge amount of scope, whatever you do with it. But the bottom line, as it's been written, as it's been laid out, it's a fantastic DMing product. It's a fantastic role-playing product. And it's a credit to Tolkien's world. So anyway, I've been Sean Connors. This has been Outsiders. Take care of yourselves and happy gaming.